The Guitar Tone Network. A guitarist's perspective on all things related to guitar tone. With your hosts, Rich Adams and Rich Goyette.
All right, so here we are.
Podcast 7.
Yeah, we're just banging these bad boys out.
Well, this season anyway.
Yeah, right. We're coming up on summer here, so I don't know how many more we're going to get here in the near future. But hey, this is a good one. So
right on. And I should say that we're not in the usual place that we record. It's kind of a live room, and I'm looking forward to editing this. And you may hear an occasional kitten, all that good stuff.
Meow.
So I just wanted to warn you.
Hey, it's all good.
Well, this is definitely your show this time because you're eyeball deep into it, and I've been kind of busy.
Yeah. Well, we've both been busy. It's the season that everything ramps up. But I'll give you a nice monologue on what we're doing here. How about that?
Sweet. Thank you, sir.
This podcast is really about electronics, and specifically around the potentiometers and the capacitors in a guitar. Modifying and changing these as an element of tone is something that I had considered before, but never really put much weight to until I started reading some stuff in some forums and wanting to see for myself sort of why you would do this, what you would get out of it. There are people who are out there who are tweakers, and there are people who aren't tweakers. And I fall somewhere in between personally. I like to tweak guitars that I'm not completely satisfied with, but when I get a guitar that's a great guitar, I don't tweak it thinking it's missing something. So in this case, we got to ask ourselves, why would you take a guitar that's a really high-end guitar and modify it? Really what it comes down to is feeling good about the guitar, picking it up, wanting to play it, being drawn to the guitar, feeling like it inspires you in a way that your other guitars maybe don't inspire you. You know, every guitar makes you play differently. In my research, changing out this wiring harness, the pots and the caps, was a relatively inexpensive way to see if there was a tonal difference. And because of the way the guitar is constructed, it's a rear-routed guitar because a Les Paul is a rear-routed guitar. You can do this change very easily and change nothing about the guitar. Literally just take a cover off the back of the guitar, break 5 solder joints, take the wiring harness out, put the new one in, resolder the 5 soldering joints, and flip the guitar back over and start playing it again. There's no time lag of any significance in between the modifications. There's no string change. Your head is still in the same space when you're playing for the most part. So in these samples, I wanted to basically do that exact thing. The reason I chose this particular guitar, this is a really nice guitar. This is a Les Paul. It's an R9 of historic reissue 1959. It has, for stock pickups, 57 plus at the bridge and a 57 at the neck. I had experienced 57s before, classic 57s, in a 339 and in an ES335. And I like them in those contexts, but in a Les Paul, these particular pickups, and they're all going to be different case by case. Even, I don't care if they're wound by a machine or not. They're going to be different, right? They sounded really sloppy to me. They sounded like they didn't have good definition. They weren't very well balanced. Now, in playing the guitar, I thought to myself, well, this could really be more to my taste. And even as my taste has evolved over the years, it could be more to what my taste is now. There may have been a time when that really sort of harsh, unbalanced thing could lend itself well to a certain kind of playing with a certain kind of amp. But for my rig, for what I'm going for, I felt like it could be more. So I went ahead and took a really great guitar and decided that I was going to rip the guts out of the thing and have at it and see what we got. Part of this experiment really was just to see if there's a difference. I mean, really, if you go to any of these sites that say we sell wiring harnesses, no matter what it is, they're going to tout how fantastically and dramatically changing out the pots and the caps change the tone.
That was one of the things I wanted to ask you about. What's the claim? Was there something specific that was being sold to you with this particular harness?
Well, the selling point was really the quality of the parts. There is this notion that mass-produced guitars have mass-produced lower quality parts. And so this particular wiring harness that I bought from RS Guitar Works, which they made a really nice product, got it to me very quickly, by the way, Their claim, they use better quality parts that are actually matched. They use high quality, new old stock parts. They test everything. They don't just reach into a bucket of parts, solder something together and throw it into the guitar, and who cares if things don't match quite right.
Right. So they match parts.
They actually take the time to sit there like a custom guitar shop. There is industry dogma around vintage wiring harnesses versus modern wiring harnesses with Les Pauls. And what we're going to look at here is actually going to be a change. The original wiring harness in my historic reissue Les Paul was a modern wiring harness. And what that means really is how the capacitors are wired to the potentiometers, if you don't know. There's a ton of information out on the web. You can go look it up. It's all out there. There is industry dogma around vintage versus modern, and there's actually some question as to how vintage got its name, because I was reading some stuff that was telling me that somebody had taken the back cover off of a real Les Paul from the 50s and early 60s, and it had what is considered today to be a modern wiring harness. So there's some fuzziness there from what I was reading. I'm sure that there are many people who are very opinionated about it. The industry dogma around the wiring types has to do with the way the volume interacts with the treble and the way that the volume interacts with the tone. Okay? So a modern wiring harness, the tone and the volume for each pickup are very independent. But when you roll off the volume, you also get a treble roll off. Okay? You can roll off the tone and it doesn't have any direct correlation to the volume. They're very autonomous in that way. A vintage wiring array is wired in such a way where as you roll off the volume, you allegedly don't lose treble, but the tone has a direct interaction with the volume. And so there's a balancing act between those two things, and it drives some people nuts. It drives some people absolutely crazy. I happen to like the lack of treble roll-off with vintage a little bit more than the interaction bothers me.
Yeah, and you've had a little time with this guitar now. It's been a little while since you've done the actual switch.
That's absolutely true, yeah. And so I've been playing with it a little bit and tweaking it even more as time has gone on. When it comes to this kind of thing here, there is an incredible amount of information available, from wiring diagrams to forums to books. Go out there, have a look. We really are focusing specifically on the two different types of wiring that you might have in a Les Paul that are probably, I believe, the most common, which were vintage and modern. There's some things we didn't do as well with this. We didn't play with the tone volume interaction in any way, and we didn't do the switch in the middle position. We just did each pickup individually. So those are things that we didn't do. We don't want to muddy the water here. We wanted to just do this. And the sound that we went with was sort of a push sound through the Sword amp. All the specs for everything that we've talked about up to this point and that we're going to talk about in a minute here, the settings, the guitar, pictures, all that stuff will be in the show notes, so you can go ahead and go have a look. And we say it every time, make sure you go listen to the high quality files. Don't go by what's in this recording and say, I can't hear the difference. Go listen to the real stuff.
At guitartonenetwork.com.
So what do we think will happen? No, I was in the room. There's a difference. I can say that. How much is going to be up to your ear to determine, your ear being you, the listener, our faithful podcast follower. But it's really also a two-part question because the wiring type is changing. So when we listen to this, we're going to approach it from listening to the wide open settings on each pickup with each wiring array. And then we're going to listen to some samples with the volume rolling off and see if we can hear a difference. Now, when we roll off the volume, that difference may be more difficult to quantify, both to your ear and to ours, because the quality of the components is going to affect the sound in addition to the volume getting rolled off affecting the sound. So it's a bit of a complex question.
It's a little complex, but I think that what we're kind of looking for is the delta between the changes, and how much it's affected. And then trying to compare that delta in the cloud. We have to kind of store that difference in our heads. Yeah,
it's going to be a challenge, but we'll give it a listen. And you guys out there, you do the same. Listen to the high quality files like we already said. And form your own opinion. That's what it's all about.
We've seen too much to say that there won't be anything that will affect your playing, say, because we know that's going to happen.
And to be perfectly honest, it's a really good point. I did play all of these samples within an hour to hour and a half time span. and I was in the same place, and I was in the same room, sitting in the same chair with the amp the same distance away. My head was into it, and I was playing fairly heavy-handedly when I did this. You know, the guitar is strung with 10s. I'm playing a Jazz 3-pick. I'm playing the Analysis Plus yellow oval cable plugged into the Sword. It's loud enough that you couldn't have a conversation without raising your voice. I'm sitting 5 feet in front of the amp. But as you hear the difference, it's going to change your playing too.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's part of the inspiration of figuring out what you like. So on to the Shootout.
On to the Shootout.
Click, click, boom, right? My friend, on to the samples. It's up to you to tell me what we're listening to.
I shall.
Okay.
First up, we're going to go wide open with the stock array. And away we go. And we are going to switch to the new vintage array.
I love that.
Now, for wide open, I mean, there's a huge difference, and not even getting into the volume, adjustments.
That's very pronounced.
Well, there's just all this bottom end. It's just massive in comparison. The stock array, there's a fuzziness to it. There's like a blurriness to it where this is crispy,
Yeah, it's definitely tighter and more balanced, I thought, listening to it just then. Very interesting indeed. I'm sitting here grinning like a Cheshire cat because I think it's incredible. And, I think we said a little bit earlier, perhaps, maybe not, that it's really just perspective. You might like the sloppy thing. I personally like the tighter thing a little bit more for what I like to do. Mm-hmm. So that being said, listen to them for what they are, but wow. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Both very clearly still a Les Paul, but night and day.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yep. And even with a distorted tone, which usually masks these things a little bit or a lot of it.
By the way, that was the bridge pickup, if it wasn't obvious.
Go on to the neck?
Yeah, let's go on to the neck wide open just to get a gauge on what's going on here. And here we are with the stock array, the neck pickup, wide open on the volume.
I know in these recordings I let it ring out too, so you could hear the sustain, if there was a sustain difference. I know we're not doing that now, but yeah. So when you listen back, guys out there in podcast land, remember I did the sustain thing. And one particular setting, it fed back. None of the other ones did. It was so freaking cool.
Sweet. All right, so we're gonna go to the vintage array neck pickup. Wide open.
The new one. The new array. The vintage new array.
The new vintage array. The new used. No. There we go.
Feedback, baby.
Well, I mean, the difference is just glaringly
it's
obvious.
Palpable. It really is.
It's actually really sweet. It's and it's a difference that and we didn't even go with we haven't even gone to the
the volume roll off. Yeah,
but man, it just sounds really, really. It's an improvement. If I were just listening to that first one, to the stock array, I wouldn't say that sounded bad. I would say that sounds really good.
Yeah.
But then you put this on top of it, and it's almost like you put some kind of magic frosting on it.
Yeah. I like the RS Guitar Works array better too. I just think it sounds great. It's just, it doesn't have that sort of raw sloppiness that some people may like. It has a little bit more of a tighter, more balanced thing going on. And I just am amazed at the amount of difference, I guess. I mean, I knew there was a difference. In the room, I could tell there was a difference. But I mean, it's, like I said before, wow.
Yeah. And it really is like a blurriness or a fogginess that's happening on the stock array in comparison.
Now, I can completely imagine, especially on that neck pickup, that sound of the stock array, if you were doing something that was a really, I don't know, like a Brian May-ish kind of thing you were going for, you weren't chording, you weren't actually pulling chords out, and you were just doing single note lines or double stop lines, I can imagine that would just sound just spectacular, like bordering on chaos, kind of uncontrolled, like Brian May, you know?
Dude, I'm trying to jump in here because I was totally thinking something similar. I think that maybe this stock array makes the humbucker sound closer to a single coil, closer to a P90.
Yeah, maybe a P90, a single note coil P90. Yeah, definitely.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I wish we had a P90 guitar that I could compare to it in that moment. That would have been very interesting.
Yeah.
But, what are you going to do?
Yeah, but then you'd have to swap out arrays, and it really gets out of control when you start to think, okay, what's making a P90 sound like?
Yeah, it's a bit of a bunny trail. Let's face it. Let's go on to the volume. Let's check out one of them.
Okay.
I think the bridge is going to be more telling because there's more treble in there anyway.
I agree. So we're going to drop down somewhere between 7 and 8 volume setting on the stock array bridge pickup. And away we go. Now, it's important to note that we're looking for the absence of treble loss.
Right. That was volume rolled down, tone wide open bridge. Right? Because that didn't sound like a bridge pickup to me.
So,
but go ahead. Yep. So let's do the next one.
And this one should have more treble if all goes as planned. As advertised.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Yeah, I mean, like I just said, I thought maybe he got the samples wrong, that the tone was rolled off or something, but for ballparking that thing between 7 and 8 on both those recordings, even if they're off a little bit, that's a big difference. Huge. I mean, it's the difference between a neck and a bridge pickup, almost.
Right on. And Rich is an experienced player. I'm sure his ballpark is pretty damn close. You do it enough, you know? Yeah,
I made an effort to do that, obviously. As I said at the onset of the podcast, I was in a time crunch, so I wasn't being anal retentive, but I was getting it pretty close. So,
real quick, I want to listen to that same sample again, which was the vintage array on the bridge pickup. Volumes rolled off a little bit to 7 or 8-ish. I want to listen to the very last bit you did.
Yeah, when I grabbed the E and the B string.
Yeah, I want to hear the two. I want to compare that little end part real quick. So this is the vintage array. And oh man, totally.
Yeah, does it sound? It sounds. I don't know.
The stock array has so little treble in comparison. The vintage array has tons of treble in it in comparison. You can really hear it on those strings.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing. I'm going to hear that. I'm going to listen again. This is the stock. Okay, and here is the vintage.
Yeah, that's wow.
It's very
I keep saying it, but wow.
Yeah. Man, you're slowly perfecting this guitar. You can die now, Rich. and I'll inherit the guitar.
Should have brought it with me, huh? I might not have made it out here alive.
Right. Well, I do have deadly cats.
Yes, that's right.
Anything you want to hear next?
I'd like to hear those same 2 ballpark settings on the neck pickup.
Sure.
Because obviously the neck pickup's going to have a lot more low end.
Yeah.
And so I want to see how much it pronounces out.
Right on. Okay. So here's the neck pickup stock array. Slightly rolled off 7 or 8-ish. This is going to be good.
Sounds good, I'll tell you that.
It does.
I mean, there's no denying it sounds good.
And away we go. This is the vintage array, same sample. Not as pronounced as the bridge pickup, but it's
there.
It's there.
And you would think it wouldn't be as pronounced because it's going to have an inherent low-end component where you're on that pickup.
Yeah, you're starting off with not a lot of treble anyway.
Right.
Grab those high-quality samples at guitartonenetwork.com because they will be your friend.
Yeah. Yeah, listen to them on some good speakers.
Yeah, please.
Before we wrap up here, there's one thing I want to say about the podcast content here, and that is specifically around the wiring harness that I put in. We chose to go with RS Guitar Works, and we ordered the vintage wiring type with the Luxby caps. He didn't have the Luxby caps, but he indicated that he had these gray tiger caps, which are the same thing, just a different color. And they made a very nice product, got it to me very quickly. Like I said earlier, I'm very happy with it. I would definitely recommend it as a cheap way to make your guitar sound better, different, however you want to look at it. But there's also a lot of other great choices out there. And that's half the fun of it, going to try different stuff. So, get the RS Guitar Works, but, try Acme and try, some of these other companies that are out there and see what you like. Try the different caps. There are different capacitor choices, even just at RS Guitar Works. So, and like I said, that's really the fun of it. Trying different stuff and seeing what you can do, seeing what you like.
That is the geek attitude, Rich. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I mean, and this is how Rich and I differ a little bit. And I agree with him wholly. And I wish I were more active with research and stuff like that when it comes to this sort of thing. I'm more a plug and play kind of guy because I don't have the patience or the,
Well, I got to say, you've said it to me many times, and I put it in the show notes when I wrote this up, that you got to enjoy the hunt, but that, like my friend Rich says, at some point you got to shut up and play. And he's absolutely right. If you spend your entire time trying different wiring harnesses, trying to get that sound, maybe you should be working on your technique to get that sound.
Yeah.
Just saying, no, we're all at different places where we are in our heads, our fingers, our souls, but.
Absolutely. But Rich, you're slowly converting me to a lot of things. Since we've started this podcast, we both learned a lot, and I've definitely changed my mind about a few things.
One other thing that is worth mentioning at this point anyway, is that most people who are tweakers go straight for the pickups. Mm. Mm-hmm. We do. We say, I'm going to try these fancy pickups, or I'm a fan of this particular pickup, or this or that. But we're not changing out the caps and the pots on the guitar. Mm-hmm. We're not trying a different cable. We're not tweaking things in different ways, stripping things out to see what the raw signal is like. And so for me, when I was doing these recordings, part of doing this particular modification is it's easy, it's quick, and it's relatively inexpensive, and you're not pulling pickups out of the guitar and taking chances. And to be honest, if you have the same wiring harness and you're swapping out the pickups, you're still going to be restricted by the wiring harness, assuming that there's a tonal difference. So what's our conclusion here? I mean, I think that it goes without saying there's a dramatic difference. I think I personally like the RS Guitar Works array with the Lux B or Grey Tiger caps better. I happen to like the vintage wiring better too. I tend to tweak the volume more than the tone unless it's wide open anyway, personally. Mm-hmm. So I think that I hit a home run for my own personal taste. What do you think? I mean, there's a huge difference. Obviously, there's a huge difference to my ear.
Like I said, for me, it's a slow conversion. I really am surprised how you could take something that sounds really good and make it sound better out of the can like that. I mean, that guitar was plugged directly into an amp, a low wattage amp, and it just sings in comparison. It's really amazing. Outside of that, clearly being a difference in my personal experience of being slowly converted to being a bit more of a hardware tweaker as opposed to a knob tweaker. Yeah. It's very, very interesting. I'm just glad that I have Rich Adams in my life who does all this research so I could reap the benefits. It's just sort of works out really nicely. Thank you.
I do enjoy it. So it's a win-win, my friend.
Right on, man. Right on.
Feedbacks, corrections, and addendums. So this is where we sort of talk about any mail that we've gotten or anything that we've come across that maybe we misstated in previous podcasts.
Right on.
Yeah. Hey, we got an email from somebody who listened to the cable shootouts and enjoyed them, was complimentary to our ear, which we really appreciate. I personally don't think I have a very good one, and I know that Rich has a very good one.
Oh, thank you.
And so we really appreciate that. And he was interested in having us check out Bullet cables. And when we get around to doing more cable shootouts, which they seem to be very popular, we'll definitely consider that. Thank you for writing. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, you said some really nice things. You agreed with where we were coming from. And, of course, you did mention that length does matter.
And it does. And we knew that. Yeah, we know that. So and we appreciate it, you pointing it out too. So
it's good to know that people are out there, and we love to hear from people. So keep it coming. Thank you. There's some news.
And in some news, that's right. We should have mentioned this 20 times over at the beginning of the podcast. Right. We're on iTunes. It's fantastic. And Mr. Rich Goyette was the progenitor of getting us on iTunes. So awesome, dude. That's fantastic.
Oh, well, thank you. I had applied a long time ago, and it took a while. But I was just about to reapply, and then bam, here it was. I was like, we're on iTunes.
That's so cool, man. I feel like we're in the big time.
Yeah, man, we've arrived. We've truly arrived.
Yep. 7 podcasts on iTunes and heading into riding season.
Right on.
Yeah. See you in the fall.
Right. It's so true. That and yard work, right?
Yeah, right.
It was a great podcast. You did a great job putting all this together.
Thanks.
One thing I couldn't help thinking about when you were talking about how it was really easy to do, it was really quick. You did the whole shebang, recording the samples and switching out the parts within about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
There's one thing you missed. When you are soldering, you're dealing with flux fumes. So I'm wondering if you're...
Dude, I was really loose on that second set of samples. Oh.
Oh, baby. Dangerous stuff. Be careful.
Yeah. I didn't get the vintage flux either. I don't think I was using my real tin. Right. I think I was using some modern equivalent. God knows what I put in there. Oh God, I'm gonna have to take it all out now.
Right on, brother. So I guess we can let my wife out of her craft room.
Yeah. We have another podcast on our hands.
Right on.
God help us.
This podcast is licensed under Creative Commons 3.0. For more podcast and guitar tone related resources, please go to guitartonenetwork.com.